Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would share a list of authors that are a struggle for me to read. I find them to be difficult, I find them to be hard to understand, and I just thought I would share some of my struggle with everyone on here. I have pre-picked 10 different authors, and all of these authors I have read at least one of their books since starting my channel. So I have links to videos that I'll include in the timestamps for you so you can go and see what I thought about the book when I read it originally, even though I'm not going to go through all of the books that all of these authors have written because it's a wide body of work. But what's really interesting, the other thing about this list is these aren't necessarily bad authors. These are not authors that I go, wow, this is just a piece of junk. Well, except in maybe one case. But these are not necessarily authors that are ones that I don't think have value in some way. They are ones that I just personally have a hard time getting through. They are books that take me a long amount of time. They're books that after I have read them, I go, what was that? And in some cases, there are books and authors that I desperately want to love and just can't quite get there. And it breaks my heart in a couple of these cases. So, all right, but I'm going to go ahead and just jump into them, and hopefully you have you stick with me and consider giving me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think of these authors as I kind of go through them. And I know there's probably at least one on almost everyone's favorite author list on this list. So I go into this knowing that. All right, so number 10 for me is J.M. Coetzee. J.M. Coetzee is an author with a fairly large body of work. He actually also has a new release coming soon, not soon-ish. It's called The Pole, and The Pole will be out in September of 2023. Coetzee has actually won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and he has won the Booker Prize twice. So I would imagine that new book coming out will probably end up maybe being on the Booker list or international Booker list. I don't know, but it's a possibility because I know he has won 2 times. Coetzee actually is one of the most well-represented authors on the 1001 book list. He has 10 books on it. I have read 7 of those with 3 left, and with varying success. What I would say is none of them, unfortunately, have really stuck with me. I rated them on Goodreads between 2 and 4 stars, but of course didn't have any reviews on Goodreads. I have 3 left to read, which are Waiting for the Barbarians, In the Heart of the Country, and Dusklands. And I think that's really the main issue, is that out of all the books that I've read, not a single one's story has stuck. The most recent one that I read was Elizabeth Costello, and in my review video, which I'll leave linked for you, I said it was boring, that it changed perspectives and timelines too much, and I just felt it was disconnected and disjointed, and it wasn't even worth a rant, is kind of what I put in there. And yeah, he's just not been an author that I really connect with. Again, I don't necessarily think he's a bad author. I just certainly don't understand, and his stories don't stick with me for the most part. The one that I rated the highest was called Disgrace. I didn't read it as part of my booktube channel, so I can't even tell you what it was about at this point, which is really too bad. All right, number 9 is one of the authors that really breaks my heart, and I do have a couple of their books here. And unfortunately, it is Toni Morrison. So Toni Morrison is an American author with over 30 books published, which is incredible. I have actually read 2 books, and there is with 3 books more left on the countdown to read. The books that I have read are Beloved, and I read this before I started my channel, and this is not the copy I read from because this copy is beautiful, and The Bluest Eye, which I did read as part of my channel. So I'll have a link to the video for this particular one. I ended up giving The Bluest Eye only 2 stars on Goodreads. I really had a hard time with this particular book. Again, it's one of those books that, I think that there's so much value in her as a writer. I think she has a really interesting and unique perspective. I finish her books going, what am I missing? I just don't understand quite what I'm not getting with her writing. Beloved is the book that if I wanted to reread a book, it's going to be this one, because this one has so many fantastic reviews on it. People love this. This is a booktube darling. I know I've seen a number of people talk about this particular book. This is the one that I want to reread. I do also own Song of Solomon, and it is not on my 2023 list, but I do own it. So I know that I will be tackling that one at some point in time. But yeah, I still have 3 more books of hers to read. So I'm really, really hoping that she drops off of this list at some point. Maybe I'll do an updated version next year or something and see if anyone has moved off of this list. But Toni Morrison, I want to love her writing. I do, and it just never quite works for me. The next one is an author that I don't know that I've given enough of a chance to, and I will say that I am biased because of one book that I read by this author that just put me off, and I'm struggling to get past that book and really read, I think, the rest of her books with untarnished view, I guess. And the author is Elena Ferrante. Elena Ferrante is an Italian novelist with approximately 12 books published. The most famous book and book series that she has is probably the Neapolitan series, starting with the book My Brilliant Friend, which I do actually own. I read this earlier this year. No, I read it last year. I don't know when I read things anymore. I read this last year with a group of friends, and it was actually not a bad book in any way. The book that really put me off of Elena Ferrante was actually Troubling Love. Troubling Love was a book that I had kind of a little bit of a rant about, because she spends an inordinate amount of time in that book talking about women and their periods, and I just didn't understand that and why that was so prevalent in that book, and it just put me off the book, and I've never been able to get over that. What's funny about that book is I actually read it twice. The first time I didn't remember anything about it. I read it again, and the only thing I remember about it is that she talks a lot about women on her period. It's unfortunate. I haven't quite given up on her. Obviously, I need to read book 4 in the Neapolitan series because it's on the 1001 book countdown. Is book 2? No, but I do own this because would like to try continuing at that series before everything about it falls out of my memory. And then I don't have book 3 or book 4 yet. But Elena Ferrante is another one that has some real potential to move off of this list after I read some more of her work. I have a feeling if I get through like the next few of these and I dig into these characters, because there's 2 central characters in the series, that she may end up switching around and being a favorite author if I can get rid of the memory of Troubling Love. I will leave that video linked as well in the description for you. It's entertaining. All right, number 7 is Thomas Pynchon. Thomas Pynchon is an American novelist. There are 6 books that are on the 1001 book countdown, and I have only read 1 so far. So a lot of the reasons why Pynchon shows up on this list is because of the reputation of one of his books that I will have to read, which is Gravity's Rainbow. I've had people, when I've commented, just skip it, say I read it for you and you don't have to read it. Like, oh boy, how bad is this book? So a lot of the reason why he's on this list is because of that. The book that I read was The Crying of Lot 49, and I described the book in my original video as confusing and all over the place. So I just, again, as another author, I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like my brain is not absorbing what Thomas Pynchon is trying to tell me in this book. And it was one of those books that it's like, I thought this would be a good place to start with Pynchon, and I'm not sure. But I know I'm still dreading reading Gravity's Rainbow, in that there's 5 books of his I have to read. So I'm putting him on this list as a big old, I'm really concerned about going on and reading this particular author. Number 6 is a new to me author from this year. I just started reading this author in January, and unfortunately it is Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor is an American novelist. She has 3 books on the 1001 countdown, and I've actually already read 2 of them. I read Wise Blood and I read Everything That Rises Must Converge. And so a collection of her short stories and one of her novels. And the book that I have left to read is this one, The Violent Bear It Away, which is a beautiful cover, by the way. I still really like the writing, the font on this. I like the cover of it. I think it's beautiful. So Flannery O'Connor, I started with Wise Blood. And in retrospect, that's probably not the right place for me to have started. I say that in the video about that one as well, that that it just wasn't, it had a main character in it who was not very likable, and I just had a lot of trouble getting past that. The other thing I'm noticing is that books that have a certain kind of language in it, I have a really hard time. If it has even if it's appropriate for the time, I don't like racial slurs. I don't like, any type of language like that. Or any type of language like that, really. It just completely puts me off the book, and I can't seem to quite get past it mentally. And it depends on how prevalent it is in the book and what they're talking about, or what form it's in as well, and if it's deemed acceptable or not. By the characters in the book, that also plays something to do with it, and also depends on where the book is set. Now, I know that this is a Southern Gothic writer, perhaps, I'm not sure, but what I would say is that both books, as far as both books, they fell into kind of the bucket of just being okay. And the couple lines that I've tried to read from this book, I haven't gotten very far. And so again, I know this is a beloved author. People love her short stories, and I just could not get past all the death in them. Death like everywhere in these books. And just, there wasn't a happy story among them at all, which it doesn't have to be. But I also left it going, why am I reading this? And so especially the character where the main character, I just did not like. I did not like being in his head. So Flannery O'Connor gets my number 6 spot. Number 5 is Thomas Mann. Thomas Mann is a German novelist that actually won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1929. He has 5 books on the countdown, and I have read 2 and DNF'd 1. So just by the fact that I DNF'd a book, he's on this list. Sorry, Thomas Mann. If I DNF'd you, you have to be on this list, because clearly I find you extremely difficult. I have read Death in Venice, which was actually a decent book. It was also incredibly short. And then I listened to The Magic Mountain with a group last year, and I read it. I didn't understand it. I don't get what happened in a lot of it. I read it as a big part of a group. It was a group read hosted by Greg over at Another Bibliophile Reads. And I just was listening to some of the messages going, I don't understand how that's a simile for, or metaphor for this. I don't understand what's going on. And I feel like this is one of the authors that makes me just feel stupid. I just can't quite grasp everything. If you read The Magic Mountain just for reading the story, it's actually kind of fun. It's kind of different. It's like you're at the sanitarium and you don't know is he ever going to leave? Maybe not. It certainly felt like that as I was listening to it. It's also a good indication of how hard an author is for me if I need the audiobook to help me get through sections. And in this one, I just stuck with the audiobook because I didn't want to go back to the physical book. So yeah, and then Dr. Faustus, I checked that one out from the library. I had it checked out for months. I never got past the first chapter. I couldn't get past just the formal language of it. It never gave me a character to grab onto, where at least The Magic Mountain did. This one, no, didn't do that. And there was no audiobook that I could find. So it got put on the DNF list. I don't think I'm ever going to probably pick it up. I am concerned because I have two more books. I have Joseph and His Brothers in Buddenbrook to still read of Thomas Mann. And I'm worried. I'm definitely worried. Number 4 is an absolutely, again, beloved author. And I have read one and DNF'd one. So again, you're on this list because I DNF'd it. And the author is Virginia Woolf. And Virginia Woolf is a British author, and most of her work was actually published in the early 1900s. She has 9 books on the countdown, and she's the most represented female author on the list. I have read, like I said, 1 and DNF'd 1, which was Mrs. Dalloway. Mrs. Dalloway is a stream of consciousness novel. I don't get along with stream of consciousness. I know I don't. And then I just couldn't get past it. So I think it's now in my DNF folder, at least, because for a while it wasn't even there, even though I've talked about DNFing it. The thing with Virginia Woolf is that I have 7 more books to read, and I actually own more than one. I own To the Lighthouse, I own Between the Acts, I own A Room of One's Own, but this one's not on the 1001 book countdown. I just happen to own it. I bought it because it was slim. I was like, oh, that's great. It's a great way to dip into Virginia Woolf again for the countdown, and then realized it's not on the countdown. It's like, but people tell me that this is amazing, absolutely amazing, and the cover is very appropriate for the book, but maybe I'll save it for Shorty September or something. But I do own 3 of them, and I would should, like, I will be reading at least one this year, but I just am struggling with her. I don't know. I have hope that maybe one of these will be something that just really helps me dig into her writing, and then I can go back and read some others. Yeah, poor Virginia Woolf. Okay, number 3. I don't know if number 3 or number 2 is going to be the most controversial ones that I'm putting on this list. For me, one of the most difficult authors for me that I have read recently is William Faulkner. He's an American author, and he has books, again, published in the early 1900s. He's very acclaimed. He's won the Pulitzer Prize more than once. I have read 2 books by Faulkner so far, Absalom, and Sanctuary, only one of which was on the 1,000 Book Countdown. I read it actually prior to starting my channel, though, so I don't have a video about it. Yeah, the book video I do have is for Sanctuary, which I'll leave that one linked below for you. And what I have an issue with is there's something that I am missing in his writing style. There's something I just find difficult, and his characters that I have read so far, again, are not super likable. The Sanctuary has a really horrible story about it. Not horrible in how it was constructed, but the story itself is not an easy story. I would not recommend anyone start with The Sanctuary or Absalom. And part of my other misgiving, or why this author is on this particular list, is because of one of the books I have upcoming that I am very, very concerned about. And it is The Sound and the Fury. Because The Sound and the Fury, what I've heard, is a stream of consciousness novel with an unreliable narrator. It's like, okay, can we add something else? Can we add the racist language in with it as well? And that'll make it the trifecta of things that I really don't like in a book. So I'm not looking forward to it. I said, I know Faulkner is, again, a very beloved author, and I just feel like it's another author that I feel like I just don't understand. But he's definitely won a lot of prizes. He's very well respected, and a lot of people read him. There's a wonderful event in August called Faulkner in August, where people actually sit and read quite a bit of his work. I also have this book here, As I Lay Dying, which I know is Summer over at Sterling Reads, one of her favorite books. I actually bought it in one of my very first book hauls because it was one of her favorites. And then I have yet to read it. I've had this now 2 years. It's been sitting on my shelf, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May, I think. And I have yet to read it. So, Faulkner, what don't I understand about you, Mr. Faulkner? It's like, I wish I had a better brain or something. I wish I was smarter. That's what this book makes me think. These books make me think. I wish I was smarter. Right, number 2 is going to be Haruki Murakami. If you've been watching my channel for the last year, you may know I read 1Q84 and did not get along with it very well. I did it as a buddy read with Fraser Simon from Springboard Thought, who really didn't like that book. But Haruki Murakami is a Japanese author, and his books are the ones that I find the most bizarre. And I do think this is, in a lot of cases, me as a reader, and not necessarily him as a writer. I know some people love this style of writing, love his writing in particular. For me, struggle bus sometimes with his writing. And it's not that I can't get through the books, it's that I don't understand what's going on. And about the time I figure out what's going on, something happens that now we're in the bottom of a well, or now someone is being locked in a room reading Proust for multiple chapters. It's like, or they're going into an alternate universe. It's like, I thought I knew, and now I just don't know. And so that for me was just really, really difficult. There's also often a very highly sexualized content in his books, like even a book that isn't necessarily about a relationship or anything like that, and she's like standing in the mirror looking at her boobs. It's like, okay, I just don't care. If it has something to do with the story, it's a lot easier to kind of digest, but in that case, not so much. He has 5 books on the countdown. I have read 5 of his books. One wasn't on the countdown, though I thought it was. It was my mistake. I read Norwegian Wood thinking it was, and it wasn't. The one book I have left is Sputnik Sweetheart. I know he has other books coming out, or he had another book coming out, or came out fairly recently. And I just don't know if I will be picking up his writing. There's just something about it, again, that being in his brain, like as he's writing, or as he's written things, it's not really, probably not my style, but I know that lots of people really, really love Haruki Murakami. All right, and the last one, number 1, the one that I despise now quite a bit, and this isn't it's difficult for me to read author. This is an author I just don't like now, and it is John Updike. And so if you've been watching my channel for a little while, you may know I read Rabbit is Rich almost right when I started my channel. By the way, I went and rewatched that video lately, and the audio is like, oh, cringy. Like, wow, I've come a long way with my audio, I'm not gonna lie. But so John Updike is an American author, most famous really for his Rabbit series. Rabbit is Rabbit Run, Rabbit Redux, Rabbit is Rich, and Rabbit at Rest. He has actually won 2 Pulitzer Prizes, and so he is a very well-rewarded author. These books, I believe, largely came out in the 70s, and they definitely have that language in them. And his work in particular did not hold up over time, at least not for me. There's a lot of just, again, racist, over-sexualized, how he depicts women. There's an unfortunate golden shower scene at one point that I'm like, why is this here? He's a very unsympathetic character. I did not like him at all, the Rabbit character. I have read 3 of those books, and there's a 4th one, Rabbit at Rest, which I refuse to read because I don't have to. It's not on my 1001 book. It is one of the Pulitzer Prize winning books, and I'm just like, I don't want to. I just want to stay away from him. He's not an author that he's just not an author I want to spend my time in, or time with his books. He actually also wrote the book The Witches of Eastwick, which is has a movie adaptation, which I have seen multiple times with Jack Nicholson and Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer and Susan Sarandon in it. And the movie, now that I think about it, also is obviously very highly sexualized, and the women, at least in the beginning, are not depicted well in it. So I'm sure that book would be similar. I don't know, but I'm not really willing to give it a chance. I will occasionally watch that movie, but yeah, it's not the best one. So those are my 10. What did you think of my list? Are there any that you vehemently disagree with? Are there any that you would like to buddy read with me and hopefully give me a better understanding of the book? I would love that, especially if you want to buddy read a Virginia Woolf. I would absolutely love that, or buddy read William Faulkner and help me get through that. That would be fantastic. I will try an audiobook of Toni Morrison because people have given me that recommendation, and I'm hoping that really helps me with that. But that's my top 10 of authors that I struggle with. Again, I don't think they're necessarily bad authors, well, except for in the case of John Updike, but I don't think they're bad authors. They just, my brain and these books just don't connect. So I thought I would share it all with you. Please share with me one of your authors that you struggle with a lot. I would love to hear that. And also, if one of these was your favorite, please let me know. But consider, oh, what am I saying? I'm forgetting my own line. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, thanks. Bye.